I had a feeling something wasn't right in my house, so I pretended I was going to visit my sister. While I stood across the street watching my own home, an older neighbor suddenly came up behind me and tapped my shoulder. "Wait until midnight," he whispered. "Then you'll understand everything." And he was right. When the clock struck 12, what I saw nearly took my breath away. But let me tell you how things reached that point. My name is Elena. This home where I've lived for 40 years is my safe space, the place that holds my entire life. I built it piece by piece with my late husband. Every corner carries a memory. The kitchen where we made breakfast every Sunday. The living room where we watched our son Mark grow up. The garden we tended together. When my husband passed away 7 years ago, Mark insisted he and his wife Lena should move in. "So you won't be alone, Mom," he said. Back then I thought it was pure kindness. I had no idea how wrong I was. At first everything felt peaceful, even enjoyable. We shared meals, we talked, we laughed. Lena acted warm and caring. She helped me shop for groceries, cooked meals she knew I loved, like pot roast or mashed potatoes. Mark fixed whatever broke around the house. I kept thinking, how lucky I am to have my family close during my old age. But about 4 months ago, everything shifted. It was like someone had flipped a hidden switch. Their smiles felt forced, conversations became unnatural, and then the whispering began. At first, I blamed my imagination. Maybe age was fooling me, but the whispers were real. Whenever I stepped into a room, they instantly fell silent. Mark would shove his phone away quickly, like he didn't want me to see something. Lena would switch topics with a tight smile. "What were you talking about?" I'd ask. "Oh, nothing important," Lena would say sweetly, though her voice no longer sounded sincere. "Just work stuff, Mom," Mark would add without meeting my gaze. Then I noticed something else. The door to my old master bedroom, one I had turned into storage after my husband died, was suddenly always locked. It never used to be. "Why is this door locked?" I asked. Lena answered too fast. "There's a moisture issue. We don't want your belongings to get damaged." But I had no memory of discussing moisture problems with them, and I had definitely never told them to lock the room. Worse, at night I sometimes heard odd sounds coming from behind that door. Footsteps, muffled conversations, even laughter that didn't belong to either of them. One night, close to 11 p.m., I heard the front door creak open. I quietly slipped out of bed and moved into the hallway without making a sound. From where I stood, I could see the entrance. I watched Lena greet a young woman carrying a small suitcase. They spoke softly. The woman handed her something, probably cash, and Lena quickly tucked it into her pocket. Then she led the woman straight down the hall, right to that moisture problem room. I heard a key turn, the door opened, a yellow light spilled out, and then it closed again. The next morning, I said nothing. I just watched them. Lena served coffee with that too-perfect smile. Mark scrolled through his phone, barely paying attention. "Did you sleep well?" I asked casually. "Great, Mum," Mark mumbled. "Like babies," Lena added. "Liars, both of them." But I needed real proof before I confronted them. That afternoon, while Lena was out shopping and Mark was at work, I decided to try opening that locked room. I had my own set of keys, of course. It was my house. But when I tried, I realized they had replaced the lock entirely. They had changed the lock on a room in my house without even telling me. My heart raced, and anger surged through me. Who did they think they were? This home belonged to me, every inch of it. But anger alone wouldn't solve anything. I needed to think clearly. If they were hiding something, I needed to uncover it without alerting them. I needed a strategy. Then it came to me. I would fake a trip. I'd tell them I was visiting my sister in another city, maybe Boston. I'd leave them alone in the house and watch what they did when they believed I was gone. And that's when I went to speak with Sam, my lifelong neighbor. He lives right across from my house. From his window, he can see my front door clearly. I told him what I suspected, and what he said made my blood run cold. Elena, I've noticed odd things too, Sam murmured as he poured iced tea in his kitchen. Sam is 70, a widower like me, and he's been our neighbor since my husband and I built this place. He knows my life, my joys and my hurts. For weeks I thought about telling you, he said. But I wasn't sure if I should get involved. I didn't want to alarm you unless I was certain. His hand shook a little around the cup. What have you seen, Sam? I asked, a chill settling in my stomach. He let out a long sigh before he spoke. People arriving at your house at strange hours, always at night, always carrying suitcases or bags. Sometimes young women, sometimes couples. Never the same faces. They come by taxi or private car. Lena opens the door. They talk briefly and go inside. Early next morning they leave. Everything is quick and quiet, like they don't want to be seen. His words confirmed my worst fears. I wasn't imagining things. Something was happening in my house. Something involving strangers, money, and secrets. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I asked, feeling both relieved and anguished. Because I hoped I was wrong, Sam replied. I wanted a logical explanation. Maybe they were friends of Mark's, maybe family of Lena's needing a place to stay, I told myself. But when I saw Lena accepting cash at the door last week, I realized it was a business, and hidden businesses are rarely honest. He leaned closer and lowered his voice as if someone might overhear. Elena, I think they're using your home for something. I don't know exactly what, but it's something they don't want you to know. That's why they wait until you're asleep. That's why by day they act normal. There was one more detail Sam mentioned that I hadn't expected. A letter I had been missing. Papers, he said, keep turning up in the wrong place. A bill here, a notice there, little things that meant someone had been rifling through my drawers. I felt a cold knot of dread. My paperwork, old deeds, bank notices were kept at the bank, but small letters, postcards, the kind of things my late husband had kept, those had been moved before I noticed. Sam shrugged as if to spare me. I thought maybe you misplaced them, but with these other things it all fits together. That night I set a plan in motion. I would pretend to go on a trip. I'd make sure Mark and Lena saw every piece of luggage. I'd call my sister from the living room on speaker, loud enough for them to hear. I would make them believe I was leaving town. At dinner I mentioned casually, tomorrow I'm visiting my sister for a week. I haven't seen her in months and she's been insisting. The reaction was immediate. Mark looked up with eager eyes. Lena stopped chewing and flashed a smile that was too wide, too eager. That's wonderful. You need a break, a change of scene, right, Mark? My son nodded energetically. Yes, Mom, you deserve it. We'll handle the house. Don't worry about a thing. Those words echoed in my mind with a dark tone, the way they said it, that barely hidden relief, their hurry for me to go. I continued the act. Please water the garden every other day and keep the house tidy. You know I can't stand clutter. Lena nodded with exaggerated cheer. Of course, everything will be perfect when you return. Enjoy your trip. Perfect. They wanted me gone. They needed me gone. That only proved they were hiding something big. I packed my old suitcase, same one my husband and I used on our travels, and made sure they saw every choice I made. I hugged Mark at the bus terminal, smiling in a way I had practiced for years. I walked toward the platform and then slipped away at the last moment, taking a different exit. I wanted to keep them believing I had left. That night, from Sam's guest room window, I watched my own house as if I'd never called it my own. I was 62 and I felt like a spy in my own life. The truth is, I was terrified, but I was determined too. I would not let this house, place my husband and I had built, be used as a stage for someone else's greed. At first, the hours passed quietly, almost suspiciously so. From Sam's upstairs window, the view of my house looked deceptively peaceful, the way it always had on warm evenings when my husband and I used to sit on the porch and sip tea. But now the stillness felt staged, artificial, like a performance rehearsed to fool me. Sam must have sensed my tension because he kept the house dim, only a single lamp glowing softly in the corner. They won't see us from here, he reassured me, though the reassurance didn't soften the unease tightening in my chest. Around 6, the first sign appeared. A car pulled up slowly, stopping just beyond the reach of the streetlight. It wasn't the silver sedan from the night before, but a small, dark hatchback. 2 people stepped out, a couple in their 20s, laughing as if they were on vacation. The woman carried a bright purple suitcase that caught the last hints of daylight. The man held his phone, checking a message. Both walked straight toward my front door. Before they even reached the steps, Lena opened the door. She greeted them with that polished, false warmth that had become her mask these past months. They exchanged a few quick words. Then the man pulled out his wallet. My stomach wrenched as I saw Lena accept cash again. She didn't even pretend to hide it this time. "That's your first proof," Sam whispered beside me. "But proof of what?" I still clung to the fragile hope that this was something harmless. Maybe they were hosts on some app, though I knew I had never given permission. Maybe this was temporary, something they were trying just for quick money. But deep down, I knew better. People don't hide innocent things behind locked doors. They don't replace locks on rooms they have no right to seal. They don't whisper about moisture problems that don't exist. More lights flicked on as the couple moved inside. The kitchen light glowed first, then the hallway, and, finally, old master bedroom. My bedroom before everything changed. And then something new happened. A figure moved past the window of that locked room. A blur at first, then clearer. Someone was inside, a silhouette pacing, stopping, then pacing again. My breath caught. "There's someone already in that room," I whispered. Sam leaned closer to the window, squinting. "You're right, that's not one of the 2 who just entered." The figure paused by the window. For a split second I saw them, a young man, maybe 19 or 20. He wasn't laughing like the others. His face was tense, eyes darting toward the door. Then he retreated out of sight. "Another guest?" Sam murmured. My heart thudded miserably. How many people have they let in without me knowing? Before Sam could answer, the house's side door opened. Someone slipped out, same young man. He moved quickly, looking over his shoulder as if afraid of being caught. He walked around to the backyard and vanished behind the fence. "What was that?" I breathed. Sam didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the place where the young man had disappeared. The tension in his jaw gave away what he was thinking. This was more than just a quiet rental scheme. Something else was happening. And then something happened that made every hair in my arms stand on end. The porch light of my house clicked off. Not dimmed, not flickered, clicked off. Mark always kept that porch light on. He'd made a habit of it. Even as a teenager, he'd check the light before bed. "It keeps the house safe, Mom," he used to say, proud of his sense of responsibility. If the porch light was off, it meant only one thing. Someone wanted the house to appear empty to passers-by. By 9 p.m. the sounds began. Soft footsteps. A door closing too gently to be natural. The faint scrape of furniture being moved, and then whispers. Murmurs slipping through the cracks of the walls like restless ghosts. Lena's voice was unmistakable. "Only 2 nights. No, she won't be back until Monday. Yes, it's safe." I leaned forward, straining to hear more, but the words dissolved. "Let's get closer," Sam said. We slipped into the hallway and then down into Sam's small den where another window faced slightly left, giving us a partial view into the living room if the curtains were parted even an inch. Sam tilted the blinds just enough for me to peek. Inside my living room, 2 new people were now sitting comfortably on my couch, eating from the plates I had bought last Christmas. A third person, someone I hadn't seen before, A woman in her mid-30s was opening my refrigerator, rummaging inside like she owned the place. She pulled out my leftover casserole and slid it into the microwave. My chest felt tight, bruised from the weight of everything I was seeing. But the worst moment came when Lena walked into the living room carrying a small notebook. I knew that notebook. It had once been mine, a floral patterned journal where I used to write shopping lists or reminders. Now it was filled with neat, precise columns. Lena flipped through it, nodding, whispering to one of the guests, pointing toward the hallway as if assigning them a room. "Look," Sam whispered suddenly. His voice shook. On the coffee table lay a stack of small envelopes, cash envelopes, and under them my house's deed. The one I kept in the upstairs drawer that had been opened recently. The one Sam had mentioned finding half open the other morning. My knees weakened, but Sam steadied me. "You're not imagining any of this," he murmured. "Whatever they're doing, it's big, it's planned, and it's not something they want you discovering." The next morning, Lena stepped out of the house with grocery bags, acting as though everything was perfectly normal. Mark left for work shortly after, straightening his tie in the way he always did. They played their roles seamlessly, devoted son and the helpful wife. But now I knew better. And when I checked the mail slot from Sam's window, I noticed something chilling. A thick white envelope addressed to me, tucked halfway in, as if someone had removed it from the mailbox and then placed it back. My mail. This wasn't just strangers in my house, this wasn't just secrecy, this was invasion. Something in my life, my paperwork, my rooms, my memories, was being rearranged behind my back. And I was no longer sure how far Mark and Lena were willing to go. But I knew one thing with certainty. I needed more proof. Real proof. And I needed it before they discovered I was onto them. The morning after those strangers filled my home, I barely recognized the strength in my own voice when I told Sam, "I need more time. I need to know everything they're doing." Surprisingly, Sam didn't try to talk me out of it. He simply nodded, poured me some warm coffee and said, "Then we'll watch every night until we understand exactly what they're hiding." But even as I said those words aloud, something heavier pressed on my mind. Not fear, something quieter and colder, a suspicion that had been whispering in my ears for weeks but had never fully formed. Why had my important letters been misplaced? Why had the small drawer in my bedroom, one where I kept old documents, been disturbed? Why had a postcard from my cousin been moved under a stack of newspapers? All small things, yes, easy to dismiss, but not anymore. That morning, while Mark and Lena believed me to be halfway to Boston, Sam and I stayed tucked inside his dim living room, watching my home from his front window. The house looked so normal under the sunlight. A bird perched on my porch railing, pecking at something. A delivery truck passed by. A couple jogged down the sidewalk. Yet beneath that soft morning picture, something rotten moved. As Lena left for her usual mid-morning errands, she paused at the mailbox. She opened it, shuffled through the envelopes, pulled out 2 letters and, after looking around, slipped one into her handbag before returning the rest carefully. "Did you see that?" I stepped forward, voice trembling. Sam nodded grimly. "Your name was on that envelope. I saw it from here." She wasn't just hiding renters, she was filtering my mail. Why? The reason hovered just out of reach, like a shadow brushing the corner of my mind. Sam placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You were right to leave the house, Elena. For now, it's safer for you here." But I didn't feel safer. I felt exposed, like a sheet of paper left in the rain. By afternoon, we started planning the fake trip in more detail. I had already told them I was leaving. They had seen the suitcase. They believed I was miles away. Now I only had to maintain the illusion. Sam helped me keep the lights low in his house. He insisted I stay mostly upstairs where I couldn't be seen. They won't look here unless they suspect you know something, he said. And do you think they suspect? I asked. He hesitated. Not yet. But Lena, she's sharper than she pretends to be. She watches more than people realize. A chill went through me, because I knew it was true. Lena had a way of speaking sweetly while her eyes scanned the room, taking in everything. She noticed where things were placed, what groceries I bought, which bills I opened first. I used to think she was just observant. Now I wondered if she had been studying me. That evening, Sam and I sat by the upstairs window again. The pattern repeated itself. New strangers arriving, envelopes changing hands, doors opening and closing as if my home had turned into a transit station. But there was something different this time. Around 7, a black car pulled up, sleek, tinted windows, the kind you don't see often in our quiet neighborhood. A man stepped out, older, dressed in a clean navy suit. He wasn't carrying luggage. Instead, he held a rigid leather folder. Lena greeted him personally. They didn't exchange cash, they exchanged papers. The porch light hit the side of his face when he turned, revealing a hard jaw, sharp eyes, and a look I'd seen before in people who meant business. Kind who didn't waste time with small talk or unnecessary smiles. When he left, Lena stood on the doorstep for a moment, her hands trembling before she caught herself and tucked her hair behind her ear. She's nervous, I whispered. Sam nodded slowly. That's the same man I saw her with 2 weeks ago, one at the coffee shop. The words sank in my chest. It wasn't just random guests or money under the table. This was coordinated, organized, and Lena was at the center of it. As the night stretched on, Sam finally leaned back with a sigh. I didn't want to tell you that last week because I wasn't certain, he began quietly. But now I'm sure something deeper is going on. He looked at me, eyes serious. Elena, I think someone has been trying to gather personal information about you. I frowned. What do you mean? 3 days ago, he said. I saw Lena walking with a clipboard. She was checking your side of the house, marking things down, the windows, the locks, even the bathroom vent. I didn't think much of it at the time. But now, my heart thumped against my ribs. Why would she do that? Sam took a long breath. I think she's preparing something official, something that might need documentation. My throat tightened. Official, documentation. The words felt heavy with meaning. What do you think she's doing, Sam? Just tell me. He hesitated, then said what I had been too afraid to guess. I think they might be gathering evidence to claim you're not capable of managing the house anymore. A cold wave washed through me. To what end? To take control of the property? Those words hit harder than anything I'd seen so far. Mark, my own son. He had always been gentle, the type of boy who cried when he broke his toy truck because he thought it had feelings. The teenager who held my hand when his father was dying. The young man who insisted he move in so I wouldn't be lonely. Had all of that been real? Or had Lena slowly shaped him into someone new, someone whose needs came before mine? I rubbed my temples, suddenly lightheaded. I can't believe my son would do that. Sam squeezed my hand gently. I don't think this was Mark's idea, he said, voice soft. I've known that boy all his life. He's weak when he's pressured, but he's not cruel. Lena, she's different. She has a way of twisting things, making people agree with her. A truth I had never wanted to admit settled painfully inside me. Lena did manipulate, subtly, slowly, sweetly. For years she had made Mark feel small whenever he stood up for himself. She didn't yell, she didn't insult him. She simply controlled the narrative until he believed her version of reality. And now, maybe he believed her when she said I needed help managing my own home. It was past 11 when Sam finally insisted I rest. Tomorrow will be another long day, he said. If this is heading towards something legal, you'll need your strength. I lay awake in the guest bed staring at the dark ceiling. Was I losing my mind? No. I was losing control of my life and someone else was taking it piece by piece. But I wasn't going to let them. As I closed my eyes, one thought anchored me like a steel chain. If they want to take my life apart, they'll have to do it while I'm watching. And I won't make it easy for them. The next evening arrived with a strange heaviness, the kind that presses on the air before a storm. Even Sam felt it. He didn't say so, but the way he paced near the window, tugging lightly at the curtains, told me enough. Something was building, something bigger than renters and secret envelopes. It was barely past 6 when the first unfamiliar car arrived, a dark blue sedan with out-of-state plates. A young couple stepped out, the woman adjusting her sunglasses even though the sun had nearly set. They carried matching backpacks, the kind tourists use. Lena opened my front door within seconds, like she had been waiting behind it just for them. Cash exchanged hands. The couple stepped inside. Then, 15 minutes later, a second car pulled up, then a third. By 7:30, the pattern was undeniable. My house was receiving a steady stream of strangers. But tonight was different. By the time the sun disappeared completely, the number of visitors was far higher than anything I had seen the previous night. They came in groups now, laughing loudly, dragging rolling suitcases, treating my porch like the entrance of a cheap motel. "What on earth?" I murmured. Sam's face tightened. "Elena, that is at least 10 people." It struck me like a blow. 10. 10 strangers moving freely inside my home. 10 people touching the walls my husband once painted, walking across floors I had cleaned for decades, opening cabinets I had organized, breathing in the scent of my life. By 8 o'clock, the house looked alive in a way that terrified me. Lights flicked on in the guest room, then in the hallway, then the living room. The kitchen was bright as day. Shadows moved behind curtains as bodies walked across rooms that had always been mine. But it wasn't the numbers that made my heart seize. It was the noise. Laughter, loud conversation, music, soft but unmistakable, coming from behind the locked master bedroom door. "They're using all of it," I whispered. "Every room." Sam swallowed hard. "This is no small operation, Elena. It's a full lodging setup. They must have been doing this for months." My pulse throbbed painfully in my throat. But before I could process any of that, something even stranger happened. At 9:30, a large white delivery truck pulled up to the side of my house. A truck. It wasn't one of the usual neighborhood services, not a postal van, not a service technician. This truck had no company logo, no markings, nothing to identify it. Just plain white. "What is that?" I breathed. Sam leaned forward. "That's not normal." We watched as a man jumped out of the passenger side. He looked young, maybe 25, with a clipboard in his hand and a baseball cap pulled low. He walked to the back of the truck and opened the doors. Inside were boxes, stacked boxes, rows and rows of them. My stomach flipped. He unloaded the first 2 boxes and carried them toward my backyard gate. He didn't use the front door. He used the side path, one that led directly to the yard and to the shed. "Oh my God," I whispered. "Sam, they're bringing in supplies." "For what? Why through the shed?" Sam didn't answer. His silence was the only confirmation I needed. He was just as frightened as I was. The man returned to the truck and unloaded 3 more boxes, then 4, then another 2, all carried down that same path. "Those aren't household items," Sam muttered. "That's bulk delivery." They finished unloading within 15 minutes. The truck drove off without headlights for the first half a block. An intentional move. Sam and I exchanged a look. This wasn't little side money anymore. This was distribution. This was coordinated. This was dangerous. I rubbed my palms together to stay calm. "Sam, what do you think is in those boxes?" He shook his head. "I don't know." But whatever it is, they didn't want anyone to see it. As he spoke, another shadow moved near the shed, someone inside. I felt a shiver crawl up my arms. Something about the way the shed light flickered on and off made my stomach twist. "That's not Lena," I whispered. Sure enough, the shadow was too tall to be Lena and too broad to be Mark. Who else had access to my shed? We watched for several minutes, but the person didn't re-emerge. The silhouette moved around inside the shed, then paused, then moved again, like they were organizing the boxes or opening them. Then another figure approached. This one was Mark. Mark walked into the shed without hesitation, clearly expected whoever was inside. I felt something collapse inside my chest. Sam whispered, "This just got a lot more complicated." The shed door closed, the light flickered, and suddenly I remembered something that had slipped from my thoughts until now. My husband had once told me that the shed was the safest place on our property because of the reinforced floor he installed after a flood decades ago. "It can hold a lot of weight," he had said. A chill ran down my spine. A shed that could hold weight. Rows of stacked boxes, hidden delivery trucks, strangers moving freely. Everything was connected, I could feel it. And just when the fear reached its peak, something unexpected happened. 4 teenagers, barely older than high schoolers, tiptoed out of the backyard gate, whispering nervously. They looked around before darting down the alley and disappearing behind the neighbor's fence. "Teenagers," I whispered. "Why would teenagers be coming from my backyard?" Sam slowly sat back. "Elena, this is more than just lodging or mail. This feels like layers." Layers. A word that made my skin prickle. Then, as if to confirm that nothing was as simple as it seemed, Lena stepped into the backyard and locked the alley gate behind the teenagers. "She knew they were there," I whispered. Sam nodded. "She's managing all of this." A truth settled over us like dust. Lena wasn't just helping, Lena was orchestrating. Mark might have been involved, but Lena was the one pulling strings, one coordinating people, collecting money, managing schedules, even controlling access to the shed. The night stretched deeper, darker. By 11, the house quieted a little. The guests had settled in. Lights dimmed. Curtains were drawn. But I couldn't stop staring at the shed, at the people who had vanished inside, at the boxes, at the secrets. Sam placed a hand against the window frame, steadying his voice. "Elena, whatever's happening in that shed, it's the key to all this." I nodded slowly, because even from across the street, I could feel it. Whatever was hidden inside that shed was the reason the locked room existed, the reason strangers came and went, the reason envelopes disappeared, the reason Lena whispered behind closed doors, the reason they needed me gone. And as the porch light flickered again, once, twice, then stayed off, I felt a cold certainty settle deep in my bones. This wasn't just greed anymore. This was a plan that involved my home, a plan that involved my name, a plan that would swallow me whole if I didn't uncover every part of it. I whispered into the dim room, my voice trembling but resolute. "Tomorrow, I'm getting inside that shed." The next morning slid in quietly like the world outside was holding its breath. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those boxes, those strange, unmarked boxes being carried into my shed. I saw teenagers slipping away. I saw Mark stepping inside with someone I had never seen before. By sunrise, a decision had already formed inside me. I didn't need to say it aloud. Sam saw it in my eyes the moment he handed me a cup of warm tea. "You're planning something," he said softly. "I have to get into that shed," I replied. Sam didn't argue. He only sighed, as if the thought of it pained him. "We'll do it smartly, not rushed, not recklessly." There was something comforting about the way he said "we." For the first time in days, I didn't feel alone. But before we could plan anything, something unexpected happened. A man appeared. Not a renter, not a delivery worker. not someone I had seen before. He wore a crisp shirt, a dark vest, and carried a small leather briefcase. He walked straight toward my home in the middle of the morning as if he had every right to be there. Lena opened the door almost instantly. She didn't act startled. She didn't ask who he was. She smiled, a practiced, confident smile. "Who is that?" I whispered. Sam narrowed his eyes. "He looks like an evaluator." "The same man from the other night?" I asked. Sam shook his head. "No, this is someone different, and somehow even worse, because he was holding a clipboard." Lena welcomed him in, gesturing toward the dining table, very table where my husband and I had shared meals for decades. For nearly an hour, the man sat with Lena. Sometimes Mark walked in, then out. Papers were laid out, pages flipped, pens moved. My heart pounded harder with each passing minute. "What could they be discussing this early?" I murmured. Sam exhaled slowly. "When I was managing the accounts for the neighborhood council, we had several property inspectors. You learn to recognize their posture." He pointed at the man's briefcase. "That's where they keep forms." My chest tightened. Forms for what? Sam looked at me with quiet worry. "Elena, sometimes these forms are used when someone is preparing to claim a property owner is unfit to maintain their residence." The words stabbed through me like ice. "Sam, no, Mark wouldn't." "They wouldn't?" He didn't soften it. He didn't sugarcoat it. "They preparing something official." My breath trembled. Before I could get myself under control, the evaluator, if that's what he was, stood, shook both their hands, and walked out with a satisfied nod. Elena closed the door behind him and leaned against it, breathing out like someone relieved that a critical step was done. A step in what? My mind churned. I turned away from the window. The room felt too small, too suffocating. Sam gently placed a hand on my back. "Elena, maybe it's time to tell your lawyer. I need more," I said, "more proof." Because if I went to my lawyer with just suspicions, she would worry, but nothing more. And I didn't need worry. I needed defense, protection, an airtight shield, which meant I needed to see those boxes. Sam and I spent the afternoon walking slowly through old conversations, my memories, the things Mark had said that didn't make sense at the time. I remembered something. A conversation from almost a year ago. Mark had approached me in the kitchen, wringing his hands. Something he used to do when he was nervous. "Mum," he'd said gently, "have you ever thought about letting me handle the bills? You don't need to stress yourself. I can take care of the paperwork for you." Back then it felt harmless, sweet even. But I said no, I wasn't ready. And I was still sharp. I still understood every line on every statement. Elena had been standing behind him, watch it, listening, and when I said no, her face tensed for a split second before she smiled again. I hadn't thought much of it, but now, as I sat in Sam's living room, a chill seeped through me. Was that their first attempt? Had that plan been growing that long? A shiver moved through me. Sam noticed. "What is it?" he asked. I repeated the memory. He listened quietly, then nodded. "Elena, that wasn't a question, that was a test. A test, to see if I would hand over control willingly. And when I didn't, they changed tactics. The whispering, the mail, the locked room, the shed, the new people. Everything fit together like pieces of a puzzle I had been too scared to assemble. By evening, the stream of strangers began again, though fewer than the night before. But tonight, the guests weren't the focus, the shed was. I watched as Mark stepped outside around 7:30. He glanced around the yard, then walked to the shed with a purposeful stride. He unlocked it quickly and slipped inside. A dim yellow light flickered behind the dusty window. Then a second shadow joined him. Lena. They stayed there for nearly an hour. "Sam," I whispered. "Tonight's the night. I can feel it. We need to time it right," Sam warned. "If they catch you—" "They won't," I insisted. They won't even know I was there. And as if the universe itself decided to cooperate, something unexpected happened. The guests started leaving. Not all of them, but enough. A pair of young women carried their bags outside. A man with a thin mustache hurried out with a backpack. A couple whispered something to Lena at the door before stepping off the porch. The flow was strange, too early for the usual overnight stay. Then Lena turned off the porch light. Sam exhaled slowly. Whatever they're doing tonight, it's different. Different. Important. At 9:30, Mark and Lena both stepped out the front door together. They walked toward their car, but instead of driving off, they headed down the street. "Are they leaving?" I whispered. Sam watched them disappear around the corner. "Alina, now is the time." My heart lurched, but I nodded. I pulled on Sam's old jacket, something dark enough to blend into shadows. Sam walked me through the back of his house into the alley. The alley was quiet, the air cool, carrying the scent of damp earth. He squeezed my arm gently. "I'll stay here by the gate. If I see them coming back, I'll warn you." I nodded, gripping the keys in my shaking hand. And then I stepped through the gate behind my home, into the yard I had tended for 40 years, into the darkness of my own past, into the truth I had been running from. Every step felt like walking toward the edge of something sharp and inevitable. The shed loomed ahead, small, harmless-looking, filled with memories of my husband's tools and projects. But tonight, it felt like a vault. I reached the padlock. My fingers trembled as I fit the key. The lock clicked open. I stepped inside, and everything changed. The smell hit me first. Not the familiar scent of old wood and machine oil that had lived in their shed for decades. Not the scent of my husband's tools or the earth from the garden. This was different, sharper, chemical, out of place. Something metallic hovered at the edge of the air, mixed with the faint sweetness of cardboard and dust. I paused in the doorway, letting my eyes adjust to the dim yellow light flickering from the single bulb overhead. The shed looked both the same and entirely unfamiliar, like someone had taken my memories and rearranged them into a stranger's puzzle. My husband's old workbench was still there, but the neatly stacked boxes of nails and screws were pushed aside. His wooden toolbox wasn't on its usual shelf. The plastic bins where he had kept gardening gloves and spare bulbs were shoved into a corner, and at the center of the shed sat the boxes. The same unmarked boxes the delivery truck had brought, 12 of them, stacked in a wall that didn't belong in the shed where my husband used to carve birdhouses. My heartbeat thudded so loudly I was afraid Sam would hear it from the alley. I moved closer, and that's when I noticed something else. A clipboard, set neatly on my husband's old stool. My throat tightened as I picked it up. The top page held a printed grid with columns labeled doses, quantity, weekly total, distribution route, distribution. My fingers shook as I flipped the page. The second sheet listed dates, recent ones, and initials next to them. 2 of the initials belonged to Mark and Lena, but there were others, names I didn't recognize, names that belonged to people who were clearly helping them. My stomach knotted painfully. I turned to the boxes with a dizzy weight pressing against my ribs. Slowly, I lifted the lid of the first one. Inside were smaller containers, plastic vials, dozens of them, neatly arranged, labeled with stickers. At first, the labels confused me. Sleep aid plus night, sleep aid plus day, calm sharp, mind ease. At a glance, they looked like supplements, but the doses, the warnings printed in tiny font, the lack of manufacturer information, this wasn't from any pharmacy. I opened the second box, this time not vials, papers, contracts, unsigned forms, medical intake sheets. The logo on the corner of several documents made my skin crawl. Golden Hope Residence. The same name Sam had heard at the coffee shop. The same facility Lena whispered about days ago. I dropped into a crouch, breathing fast. Page after page spilled from the box as I shifted through them, forms for voluntary admission, emergency transfer, guardianship adjustments. All of them were blank, except one. One had my name pre-filled, my full name, Elena Maria Dawson, and worst of all, on the signature line, printed faintly beneath the blank space, were the words, "Signature may be secured during sedation." The room blurred, my fingers went numb. I clutched the papers to my chest as if trying to protect myself from my own name, but I forced myself onward. I opened the third box. This one held cash, bundled, rubber-banded, labeled by week. My breath stuttered. Not a few $100s, not 1,000, several thousands, organized, counted, stacked. My home wasn't just being used for illegal lodging, it was being used as a front. My knees trembled as I reached for the notebook sitting beside the cash. My notebook, one Lena had repurposed. Inside, the pages were filled with Lena's handwriting. ED, check appointment Friday at 10 a.m. SA confirms sedation available. M needs to practice signature guiding. Paperwork to be filed Monday, urgent. Move elder to facility before court date. Move elder. I wasn't even a name, I was a task, a line item. A chore to be checked off. I felt something inside me splinter. Something delicate I had spent decades building. I wanted to leave. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the boxes apart. But I wasn't done. My husband had built the workbench with his own hands. I knew every drawer, every corner. And I knew especially about the hidden compartment under the right side. A space where he used to keep small things he didn't want misplaced. Old concert tickets, a postcard I wrote him when I visited my sister the first time, his wedding ring when he worked with tools. The compartment didn't open easily. I had to press on two sides at once. It popped open with a quiet snap. But instead of trinkets, instead of memories, I found something else. A stack of envelopes, my mail. Every envelope addressed to me that I hadn't seen in weeks. Bills, bank notices, insurance statements, and one letter from my doctor's office, unopened. My heart stuttered as I tore it open. Inside was a printed notice. We attempted to contact you regarding your recent test results. Please call our office immediately. Test results. A hollow ache opened in my chest as I realized I had never taken any tests. Mark and Lena must have been calling the office pretending to be me. For what? Why? What else were they forging? A sound tore me from my spiral. Footsteps, outside, fast, heavy. Coming toward the shed, my blood iced over. I turned off the light and crouched behind the taller stack of boxes, forcing shallow breaths. The shed door rattled. My heart slammed against my chest. Then a voice. "Mark, did you leave the lock open?" A beat. A second voice. Not Lena. Deeper. Harsher. "I told you to double-check every entrance. She could come back early." She. Me. My lungs seized. Mark mumbled something I couldn't make out. The stranger continued, irritation dripping from every word. "We don't have time for mistakes. The forms need to be signed by next week. Without her signature, we have nothing. Do you understand?" Nothing. Mark's answer was small, shaky. "I know. I thought she trusted us." The stranger laughed once, a cold, humorless sound. "Trust won't matter when she's sedated." My entire body went cold. They would have found me if Sam hadn't acted. A loud noise echoed from the alley, a trash can tipping, a shout. "Hey! Who's there?" Sam's voice boomed. The footsteps outside the shed shifted, then hurried away, toward the alley. I stayed frozen until their voices faded. When I finally crawled out from behind the boxes, my hands were trembling violently. I grabbed my phone and took pictures, every label, every envelope, every sheet of paperwork, every box. Then I returned everything exactly as I'd found it. I slipped out the back door, locked it, and hurried through the yard toward the alley. Sam was there, breathing hard, white as a sheet. "I bought you time," he gasped. I threw myself into his arms. "I saw everything, Sam. Everything." He held me close without saying a word. Because he didn't need to. He knew. He understood. And as we walked back to his house, the truth settled into me like a stone sinking in deep water. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't just a rental scheme. This was a coordinated effort to take my life away, piece by piece, step by step, form by form. And now that I had seen it, they would come for me soon. Much sooner than I had feared. And I needed help. Real help. Tonight. Before they struck first. I don't remember the walk back into Sam's house. I only remember gripping my phone so tightly my fingers hurt. The images on its screen burned into my mind. Unmarked medication, forged forms, my stolen mail, admission paperwork with my name waiting for a signature they intended to extract from me while I was sedated. If Sam hadn't made that noise, if he hadn't pulled their attention away, I don't know what would have happened. Inside his living room, I finally let myself collapse onto the sofa. Sam sat beside me, giving me a moment to breathe, to gather whatever pieces of myself weren't shattered. When I lifted my head, he asked softly, "Are you ready?" I nodded. It was time to call Ellen. I dialed her number with trembling fingers. She answered on the second ring. "Elena?" Her voice was brisk, firm, but warm. "Are you all right?" "No," I whispered. "Ellen, I need help. Right now." I heard her chair scrape across the floor as if she had stood abruptly. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." And I did. Every detail, every whisper, every box, every vial, every stolen envelope, every forged document. By the time I finished, Ellen wasn't breathing evenly anymore. "Elena," she said slowly, "they're not just planning to remove you from your home, they're preparing to take over your legal identity." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "That medication isn't just sedation, it's impairment. Enough for a doctor to declare you mentally unfit under the right conditions." A chill ran through me so sharply I felt it in my teeth. "And once you're declared mentally unfit," she continued, "they can apply for emergency guardianship. With the paperwork you found, they were planning to take control of your accounts, your home, your medical decisions, everything." I pressed my palm against my forehead, dizzy. But how? "By painting you as confused, forgetful, disorganized. That's why Lena has been intercepting mail. That's why papers were moved. That's why they tried to control your appointments. They needed to build a narrative, a pattern." My breath caught. A pattern. Whispers, locks, missed letters, misplaced belongings, strangers, secret. They were building a case against me. Ellen exhaled slowly, the sound heavy with restrained anger. "Elena, this is elder fraud. A coordinated attempt to strip you of your autonomy. And with the wrong doctor, the wrong judge, and the wrong timing, they could have succeeded." The room seemed to spin. "So what do I do?" I asked faintly. Ellen didn't hesitate. "You come to my office tomorrow morning, early. Bring every photo you took. Bring Sam if he's willing. His witness account is invaluable. We're going to create a legal wall so high they won't be able to scratch it." I nodded even though she couldn't see me. "What about tonight? I can't go home." "No," Ellen agreed. "Under no circumstances do you go home." Sam lifted his eyebrows as if to say, "You're staying here." Ellen continued, "Keep your phone on, keep your doors locked. And Elena, If anything feels off, anything at all, you call me or Sam immediately. Do you understand? Yes, I whispered. But even with Ellen's instructions and Sam's presence, fear pulsed through me like a second heartbeat. The next morning, Sam drove me to Ellen's office himself. Early sunlight spilled across the windshield, but I barely registered it. Every car behind us felt too close, every pedestrian too aware. Ellen was waiting at the entrance of her building. No greeting smile, no casual come in, just urgency. Once inside her office, she locked the door, closed the blinds, and motioned us to sit. She took my phone first. One by one, she scrolled through every photo, her jaw clenched tighter with each image. At the picture of the cash bundles, she muttered, "Unreported earnings, tax fraud." At the clipboard with distribution routes, she whispered, "Criminally suspicious." At the admission form with my name, "This alone can destroy them legally." At the vial labels, "Illicit pharmaceuticals, possibly controlled substances." After nearly 20 minutes, she looked up. "Elena, your evidence is overwhelming." I exhaled shakily. "Now listen," she continued. "Here is what we must do, and we must do it quickly." She pulled out a yellow legal pad and began outlining the steps in sharp handwriting. "Step 1, sign a revocable power of attorney, not for Mark," she said firmly, "for me, temporarily. This protects you from any forged paperwork showing up." My hands trembled as I signed. "Step 2, draft a competency statement." "I've already arranged for a licensed forensic psychologist to evaluate you today," Ellen explained. "Voluntary evaluation, full mental clarity documented. This contradicts any claim they attempt to make." Sam nodded approvingly. "Smart. Very," Ellen said. "We're beating them to the paperwork. Step 3, a protective order. A legal document preventing Mark and Lena from making any medical or administrative decisions about you. They cannot schedule appointments, they cannot sign for you, they cannot speak on your behalf." Tears filled my eyes, not from sadness, but relief. Step 4. A property protection injunction. This prevents any change to your house title, utilities, taxes, or property management without your express signature. They won't be able to touch your home legally. I felt a warmth of hope rising inside me, fragile but bright. Step 5. Notify Adult Protective Services. Sam flinched. "Won't that cause trouble? It will save her life," Ellen replied sharply. "And once we notify them preemptively, Mark and Lena cannot file a complaint against Elena claiming neglect or mental decline. APS will already have her statements or file." It hit me then. They were going to file a complaint about me? Ellen didn't soften the truth. Yes, to build the case. My throat tightened. Step, trigger a municipal inspection. "This is the most important part," Ellen said. "We report anonymous concerns about illegal lodging. Inspectors will arrive unannounced. With everything you've shown me, they'll find more than enough." Sam leaned forward. "They won't expect it. They'll be unprepared." "Exactly," Ellen said. "And once formal violations are recorded, they lose plausible deniability. It strengthens your case." Step. Set a trap. I swallowed. "A trap?" Ellen folded her hands on the desk, her gaze steady. "You must go home tomorrow. Act normal. Smile. Tell them your sister insisted you come back early. Behave exactly like the Elena they believe they can manipulate." The thought of stepping back into that house made me feel faint. "Won't they?" "No," Ellen said firmly. "They won't suspect a thing. Not if you play your part." My voice cracked. "I'm scared." Ellen reached across the desk, placing her hand over mine. "You have every right to be, but Elena, I promise you this, they're the ones walking into the trap, not you." By the time the paperwork was completed, my nerves were threadbare. Sam drove us home, keeping one hand near his phone in case Ellen called with updates. But the danger wasn't finished. When we pulled into Sam's driveway, we found something waiting. A small piece of paper taped to Sam's front door. A note, written in hurried handwriting. Sam snatched it and scanned it quickly. His face went pale. "Elena," he whispered, "you need to read this." My stomach knotted as I took the paper. 5 words. "We know you never left." My entire body went numb. Sam immediately locked the door, double-checked every window and pulled the curtains tight, but nothing could stop the dread that flooded me. They knew. They knew I never took the bus. They knew I had been watching, and if they knew that, what else had they already planned? Ellen called 5 minutes later. Her voice was steady. "Elena, don't panic. This changes the timeline, but not the plan. If anything, this proves exactly how dangerous they are." I pressed the note flat on the table, staring at the words like they could swallow me. "What do I do now?" I whispered. Ellen answered without hesitation. "You go home tomorrow, exactly as planned. But now, Elena, you must be even more convincing, even more trusting, even more naive, even more unaware, because now the trap wasn't just important, it was the only thing protecting me. And the clock was no longer just ticking, it was racing." The next morning arrived with an uneasy quietness, pressing against my chest like invisible hands. I stood near Sam's window, watching my own house across the street, place that had once given me comfort just by existing. But now, even from a distance, it felt like a trap I was walking straight into. Sam had insisted I eat something. I barely touched the toast he'd made. My stomach couldn't hold anything, not when I knew I was about to step into the lion's den. "Elena," Sam said gently, placing his warm hand over mine. "Remember what Ellen told you? You're not going back as their victim. You're going back as their mirror. Give them exactly what they expect to see." I nodded, but fear flickered inside me like a weak flame. What if they can tell? "They won't," Sam said firmly. "Not if you play it right." And then, almost as if reading my thoughts, he added, "You're stronger than you think." I squeezed his hand, took a deep, steadying breath and picked up my suitcase. Same suitcase I'd pretended to pack days earlier. It was time. Sam insisted on trailing a few steps behind me, just until I reached my driveway. As I approached my home, I rehearsed my lines in my head. Warm, easy smile, the harmless explanation, the softness of a mother returning from a simple trip. My heart pounded against my ribs when I pressed the doorbell. I heard footsteps inside, fast, hurried, nervous. The door opened. Mark stood there. He froze. "Mum?" His voice cracked slightly. We didn't expect you today." I lifted my face into the gentlest smile I could summon. "I know, sweetheart. My sister insisted I come back early. She said she didn't want me traveling in bad weather later the week." Mark blinked rapidly, processing this. His eyes darted past me, briefly scanning the street, probably checking for Sam. He stepped back. "Come inside. Welcome home." The words sounded like they were rehearsed. I wheeled my suitcase through the doorway. The house smelled different, like disinfectant mixed with artificial lavender. Too clean, too tidy, like someone had scrubbed away every trace of something. It reminded me of hotels. Elena walked in from the kitchen, her smile bright and stretched just a bit too wide. "Elena, you're home early. How was the trip?" I matched her smile with one of my own. "Lovely, relaxing." My sister spoiled me, as always. I stepped forward and let her hug me, her arms wrapped around me too tightly. Not affection, checking, assessing, searching for signs that I knew. I gently pulled back. I'm just so glad to be home, I added warmly. Lena nodded quickly. We kept the house spotless for you. I can tell, I said. It looks wonderful. Her shoulders lowered slightly, a tiny exhale of relief. She believed me. Good. Now the real performance began. I moved through the living room, eyeing each corner with false casualness. No suitcases, no extra coats, no signs of strangers. Everything looked painfully normal, too normal. Mark hovered near the dining table. We thought you'd be gone another day, he said again. I gave him a sweet laugh. I did too, but my sister insisted I catch the early bus. You know how she gets. He chuckled awkwardly. Yeah, of course. Lena clapped her hands lightly. Let me make you tea. You must be tired after the trip. I lifted a hand gently. Oh, I'd love that. I missed your tea. She brightened, pleased. Go rest, Elena. I'll bring it to you. I walked toward the hallway that led to my bedroom, but paused near the kitchen doorway. Lena had her back to me. She wasn't making tea. She was spooning something from a small vial into the kettle. My heart lurched. A sedative. She stirred it slowly, carefully, then slipped the vial inside the pocket of her apron. I stepped back quietly before she turned around. When she walked out with the tea tray, her smile was bright, almost glowing. Here you are, Elena, just how you like it. I accepted the cup, letting it warm my hands. Then I set it down casually on the side table. I want to unpack first, I said lightly. The tea will taste better once I sit down properly. Her smile flickered, just for a moment, then returned. Of course, take your time. But the moment she turned away, her expression hardened, clenched, calculating. She knew I hadn't taken a sip, and I knew she was aware of it. The game had begun. I slipped into my bedroom, closing the door quietly behind me. The room had been cleaned. Perfectly. Too perfectly. My jewelry box was slightly moved. My nightstand drawer was too neat. And worst of all, my medication bottles were arranged differently. I reached for the small white bottle of my cholesterol pills. I opened the cap. The pills inside were not mine. Different shape, different color, different smell. My heart stopped. I put the bottle down, hands trembling. They had switched my medication, not just sedatives in tea, not just hidden paperwork. They were preparing to chemically manipulate me. I sat on the edge of the bed, forcing myself to breathe slowly. Imotich me the University of Maastricht Alex surf med val, tabresbong renikmask represert. And you put the same with Poldi. You fit a pin in your email, have only liking you time Janet in email, the torture still side, there's an athelage. Yeah, that's how I was thinking. They did it every always. A pin, because everything's always going every day. No, but I was saying, look, the country, then they put all the cats and you let him get it. Pretty naive, they hook us shit on that. Hold on me for a while, if I try to play for, so don't be like you. My sister spoilt me as always. I stepped forward and let her hug me, her arms wrapped around me too tightly. Not affection. Checking, assessing, searching for signs that I knew. I gently pulled back. I'm just so glad to be home, I added warmly. Lena nodded quickly. We kept the house spotless for you. I can tell, I said. It looks wonderful. Her shoulders lowered slightly, a tiny exhale of relief. She believed me. Good. Now the real performance began. I moved through. If they realize you know, they might rush their plan. And now, more than ever, I understood what she meant. That evening, Lena made a pot roast, one of my favorites. She kept watching me as she placed the dish in front of me. I smiled sweetly, then pretended to cut my portion while subtly sliding it toward the edge of the plate. It wasn't paranoia, it was survival. Mark, however, seemed different. Quiet, restless, barely touching his food. His eyes kept drifting toward me, then away. like he was searching for something in my face. A sign, a crack, a hint. "Are you feeling okay, Mom?" he asked softly. I smiled gently. "Just tired from traveling, sweetheart. I'll sleep well tonight." Lena's eyes flashed. Mark nodded, but his fingers tapped nervously against the table. At around 11 p.m., when the house was quiet and I was pretending to sleep, I heard voices. Soft, urgent, just outside my door. "What if she knows?" Mark whispered. "She doesn't," Lena hissed. "She's the same as always." There was a pause. "What if she didn't drink the tea?" "She trusts us. She'll take her pills in the morning. Everything is on schedule." Another long silence. Then Lena's voice hardened. "Stop doubting. We can't back out now." My chest tightened painfully. Mark spoke again, voice cracking. "I didn't think it would go this far." "It has to," Lena snapped. "Do you want to lose everything? Do you want to go back to the way things were? This is our chance." Silence. Then footsteps faded down the hallway. I opened my eyes, staring into the darkness. The trap was set. Tomorrow was Thursday night. Ellen planned for the inspector's visit. I only had to survive one more day, one more morning, one more cup of tea, one more smile, and then, finally, everything would come crashing down. For them. Morning came too quickly. The moment sunlight crept past my curtains, I sat up in bed, my heart pounding with the weight of everything I had overheard the night before. My hands were trembling, but I forced my breathing to steady, reminding myself of Ellen's words. "Today is the day they fall. Just play your part, Elena. We'll handle the rest." But the moment I stepped into the hallway, I knew something was different. Lena was waiting. She stood outside my door, arms crossed, her expression too neutral, too careful. "Good morning, Elena," she said, her voice overly warm. "I made you breakfast." A knot formed in my stomach. "Oh, that's so sweet of you," I replied gently. She smiled. "Come to the kitchen. You must be hungry after yesterday's travel." Travel. A single word soaked in layers of control. I followed her downstairs, keeping my posture relaxed, my steps slow. In the kitchen, a plate of scrambled eggs and toast waited at the table, next to a tall glass of orange juice. Both untouched, both suspicious. I sat down deliberately and picked up my fork. Lena watched every movement. "Go on," she urged. "Eat while it's warm." I lifted a piece of toast to my lips. Paused. Then smiled sweetly. "Let me wash my hands first." I touched dusty boxes while unpacking. Before she could protest, I stood and took the plate with me, walking casually toward the downstairs bathroom. I locked the door, emptied the food into the trash, rinsed the plate, returned minutes later. "Delicious," I said. Lena smiled, but her eyes were tight. Another test passed. All day, Mark and Lena hovered around me with forced cheerfulness. Coffee I didn't drink, snacks I didn't touch, questions I answered with soft, believable vagueness. They were waiting for something, something planned, something coordinated, just like Ellen said. At 4 p.m., Lena mentioned casually, "Don't forget your appointment tomorrow, Elena. It's just a routine checkup." My heart thudded. They were still moving forward with the Friday plan. But if all went as Ellen intended, they wouldn't get the chance. Because tonight was the night the inspector arrived. Around 40, Mark left the house. Not for work. Not for errands. I knew that walk. Stiff shoulders, the hurried gait. He was going to meet someone. Someone who expected him. Probably the same man from the shed. Lena stayed behind, pacing restlessly, wiping the counters repeatedly even though they were spotless. Once, I caught her peeking out the front door, scanning the street, looking for trouble, looking for me to slip up. I stayed in the living room, knitting calmly, pretending to be oblivious. Inside, I counted the minutes. 8:20, 8:30, 8:40. Every tick of the clock sounded like a hammer. Right on schedule, 8 p.m., strangers began trickling in. A young couple with bright hiking gear, a business traveler with a rolling suitcase, 3 middle-aged women chatting loudly. By 8:30, at least 7 people were inside the house. Perfect timing, perfect setup. Exactly what Ellen and the inspector needed. I remained silent, knitting calmly. Lena kept glancing at me as she welcomed guests, and I could tell what she was thinking. Is she suspicious? Does she know? I made sure my expression never changed. My heart pounded so violently I wondered if Lena could hear it. 5 minutes. I quietly excused myself and went to my room, exactly as Ellen instructed. Just resting, I told Lena. I'm a bit tired. Lena nodded approvingly. Good idea, rest before tomorrow. A chill slid down my spine. I went into my bedroom, closed the door, turned off the lights, and sat on the floor, waiting, listening. 8 p.m, 8:59, then 9 p.m. sharp. The doorbell rang, not politely, not tentatively, with authority. 3 firm knocks followed. Municipal Inspection Department, open up, please. The silence that followed was suffocating. I heard hurried footsteps. Mark, who must have returned through the back without me hearing, rushed to the door. His voice shook. Who is it? The inspector repeated, louder this time. Municipal Inspection Department. We received a complaint about an unauthorized lodging operation at this address. Open the door. Panic rippled through the house like a bolt. I heard murmurs from the guests. Then Lena's whisper, sharp and frantic. Don't open it! Stall! Stall them! But the inspector was having none of it. If you refuse entry, we will return with a warrant and law enforcement. You have 10 seconds to open the door. 10 seconds. 9. 8. Mark cracked. I heard the lock turn. And then the door opened. What seems to be the issue? Mark asked shakily. The inspector stepped inside briskly. A younger assistant followed, carrying a camera. The inspector looked around, at the guests, the luggage, the 2 clean counters, the unfamiliar faces. This, he said calmly, is clearly an active lodging operation. Lena stepped forward, hands shaking. No, these are just friends, visitors, one of the women interjected loudly. We booked online. Is something wrong? The inspector turned to Lena. Booked online, you say? Lena's face drained of color. Behind the inspector, his assistant started photographing everything, room by room, luggage, beds, bathrooms, extra towels, multiple toothbrushes, evidence. Undeniable evidence. The house buzzed like a disturbed hive. Mom, the inspector said to Lena, please show me your lodging permit. We don't have one, she whispered. The inspector nodded. I see. He made notes, quick, decisive strokes of a pen. Operating without a permit, he said aloud. Minimum fine, $10,000. Mark slumped onto the sofa. The inspector continued. How many non-residents are staying here tonight? A young man raised his hand timidly. I think 8 of us? 8, the inspector repeated. That qualifies this as an active illegal hotel. Lena looked like she might collapse, but the worst was yet to come. I stepped into the hallway quietly. Mark's head snapped toward me. Lena froze. The inspector turned. Mrs. Dawson? He asked, reading from his clipboard. I nodded calmly. Yes, that's me. Are you aware, he continued, that your home is being used as an illegal lodging operation? I met Mark's and Lena's terrified eyes. And then I spoke the truth. clearly, gently, and without hesitation. No, I was not aware. I never gave permission for this. Lena's lips parted, desperate. Alina, please, we can explain. I lifted a hand. No, not right now. The inspector nodded. We'll need to take statements and issue formal citations. The guests will need to leave within the next 30 minutes. Chaos erupted. Guests murmured. Some demanded refunds. Some hurriedly packed. Some whispered anxiously. Mark sat frozen. Lena looked like a cornered animal. I felt myself shaking, but it wasn't fear, it was power. For the first time in months, I wasn't the prey. I was in control, and the trap had sprung perfectly. But the night wasn't over, not even close, because soon the truth behind everything, sedation, the paperwork, the attempts to take my life, would come spilling out, and they would have nowhere left to hide. By the time the inspector finished documenting everything, the house felt like a battlefield. The guests had gathered their bags and shuffled out one by one, some annoyed, some confused, others whispering angrily under their breath. Mark sat slumped at the dining table, staring at his hands as if they no longer belonged to him. Lena paced back and forth, her breath coming out in harsh bursts, her knuckles white as she clutched her phone. But she never called anyone. There was no one left who could save them. When the front door finally shut behind the last guest, the inspector approached me. "Mrs. Dawson," he said gently, "the house is officially cleared. We'll file the report tonight. You'll receive a copy in the morning." "Thank you," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And Mrs. Dawson?" He lowered his voice. "If you need help filing additional complaints, please don't hesitate to reach out." This was significant. I nodded once. I understand. He gave me a sympathetic nod before leaving with his assistant. The door clicked shut. Silence. But not peace. The air in the house was thick, suffocating, and I knew this silence, this heavy, coiled moment, was the final breath before the explosion. I turned slowly to face them. Mark stared at me with hollow eyes. Lena stood rigid, her face pale but her stare sharp, calculating, desperate. It was Lena who broke first. "What did you do?" she hissed. I blinked. "What I did? Lena, you ruined everything," she screamed, her mask cracking for the first time. "Do you know what you've cost us? What you've—" "Stop," I said, my voice stern enough to slice through the air. She went rigid. I stepped forward. "Before you blame me, Lena, look around. Look at what you turned my home into. This is not my doing. This is yours." Mark flinched. Lena's voice rose, brittle and unsteady. "We were trying to survive. The debts, Mark's job, everything was falling apart. I did what I had to do." "And that includes drugging me?" I asked quietly. Mark's head snapped up, the color drained from Lena's face. "That's not what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what I think," I cut in. "You put something in my tea this morning." Mark looked at her sharply. "Lena, you said you weren't going to—" She spun on him. "Shut up, Mark. Just shut up." He recoiled. I stepped closer, feeling something new stirring inside me. Not anger, not even betrayal. Something colder, something resolute. "I know about the pills you switched. I know about the sedation you planned for tomorrow. I know about the forged paperwork. I know about Golden Hope residing. I know everything." Lena's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "And I know," I continued, "that you planned to make me sign over power of attorney after drugging me." Mark stood so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. Mum, wait, I didn't—" "Don't lie to me," I said, voice trembling with a fury I had held back for far too long. "Not anymore." His eyes filled with tears. "I swear I didn't know she was going to drug you." "But you knew she wanted control," I whispered. "Don't deny that." He sagged, his face crumpling. "I didn't think she'd actually do it," he whispered. Lena scoffed. "Don't act innocent, Mark. You were part of it too." He spun toward her. "You pushed me into it. You said we had no choice. I said we needed a plan," she snapped. "You're the one who agreed. You told me it was for her own good, for our good." Their fight grew louder, more frantic, spiraling like a storm. But I stood still, silent, watched the truth unravel in front of me. Then, over their shouting, another voice cut through. A calm, steady voice. Sam's voice. From the front door. That's enough. Both Mark and Lena froze. Sam stepped inside, closing the door behind him quietly but firmly. He looked at me first, checking, assessing. And when he saw I was unharmed, he moved closer. You need to stop this, he said to both of them. Right now. Lena pointed at him with a trembling hand. This is your fault. You've been spying. Sam raised an eyebrow. On what? Your illegal hotel? Your little pharmaceutical stash? Or your attempt to drug a woman in her own home? Her voice faltered. Mark rubbed his face, tears streaking down. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Sam turned to him sharply. Mark, listen to me. Whatever she made you believe, whatever lies he fed you, it doesn't matter now. You crossed a line, a serious one. Mark looked at the floor. I know, Lena snapped. Stop babying him. He wasn't forced. He wanted the house just as much as I did. Sam's voice was ice. And you wanted her out of the way, Lena shot back. She was going to give us the house eventually. I stepped forward. I was going to do nothing of the sort. Lena's jaw clenched. Why not? You don't need all this space. We could have made a life here. A life built on lies? I asked softly. On fraud? On drugging me? Her eyes flashed with something dark. You think you're so innocent? You think you don't owe us anything? I inhaled sharply. Owe you? Lena, I gave you both a home. I gave you food. I gave you comfort. And you repaid me with betrayal. Something in her snapped. Her face twisted. You were always in the way, she spat. You and your memories and your little routines and your way of controlling everything. My breath caught. Sam stepped closer. Mark collapsed into his chair again, sobbing. Lena, please, just stop. She shook him off. No, she needs to hear it. You think she's helpless? She's manipulative, always making you feel guilty, always holding the house over your head. I swallowed hard. This house is mine. I built it with my husband, and that's why you think you deserve to keep it forever? Lena snapped. While we're drowning, while you live here alone, we needed this place more than you ever did. Sam's voice hardened. There it is. Mark looked up, his face wet with tears. Lena, he whispered, please stop talking. But she couldn't. Her rage had cracked open. You think she cares about you? Lena screamed. She's been judging you for years. Every mistake, every job you lost, every bill you missed. She thinks you're a failure. Mark punched the table. That's not true. I stepped forward. It's not. He stared at me, broken. She said you... I never said those things, I whispered. Lena said them. Lena fed them to you. Lena's eyes widened just slightly, caught. Sam crossed his arms. Mark, you were manipulated. You always have been, but that doesn't excuse what you did. Mark's head bowed. I know. And then, as if all her strength had drained, Lena sank against the wall, sliding down until she hit the floor. Her voice came out in a trembling whisper. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Silence settled again, heavy, exhausted, broken. I took a shaky breath. Tomorrow, I said coldly, you will both pack your things, you will leave my house, and you will not return. Mark looked up, eyes wide with shock. Mum, please, Lena whispered, we have nowhere to go. I shook my head. That is no longer my concern. Sam stepped beside me. You heard her, he said, voice steady. It's over. And just when I thought the night couldn't get heavier, a faint beep sounded near the bookshelf. Sam's head whipped toward it. I frowned. What was that? Sam stepped forward, looked behind a row of decorative books, and froze. He pulled out a small device, a recording device. Lena's face went white. Sam pressed a button. A soft playback began. Lena's voice, talking to the stranger from the shed. "Once the sedative kicks in, we'll have her sign everything," Mark gasped. Sam shut it off and looked up at me. "Elena, you have everything you need." I nodded slowly, tears forming but not falling, because the truth was no longer hidden. It was alive, it was recorded, it was undeniable, and it was finally mine. The house fell into a thick, trembling quiet after the confrontation. Even the walls seemed to breathe differently, as though relieved that the truth was finally out, no longer forced into the shadows where lies had thrived. Mark and Lena remained in the living room long after the inspector left, their faces pale and slack. They didn't speak, they didn't move. They simply existed in that brittle space between fear and collapse. I stood in the doorway, watching them. Not with hate, not anymore, but with a heaviness I couldn't put into words. For years, this house had held us together under one roof. Now it felt like the roof itself had cracked. Sam stayed beside me, a steady presence. His calm felt like the only thing preventing me from breaking apart. Finally, I said what had to be said. "You leave tomorrow." My voice was firm, unshaking. "Before noon." Mark's eyes flicked upward, full of grief. "Mum, please, listen, I made mistakes, I know that, but I raised a hand, stopping him. "Not tonight, not now. We'll talk when I'm ready, but you're leaving tomorrow." Lena opened her mouth to argue, but Sam stepped forward, his voice low. "Don't. Just don't." She swallowed her words, and I left the room. I went to my bedroom and locked the door, not out of fear, but to create a barrier I needed. My hands trembled as I slid down to sit on the floor, the silence pressing against me. For the first time since packing my fake suitcase, I allowed myself to cry. I cried for the home I almost lost, for the son I didn't recognize anymore, for the husband who wasn't here to protect me, for the woman I used to be, trusting, warm, unaware of the danger growing inside her own walls. It felt like hours before the tears ran dry. I finally climbed into bed, pulling the blanket around me tightly. Exhaustion swallowed me whole. Sleep didn't come easily, but when it did, it was dreamless. I awoke to footsteps, not frantic, not sneaky, simply the sound of people packing, heavy bags being dragged across the floor, cupboards opening, drawers shutting. It was happening. I dressed slowly, my limbs heavy as stone. When I stepped into the hallway, Lena was at the bottom of the stairs, stuffing clothes into a large suitcase. Her eyes were red, swollen, defeated. Mark stood by the front door. He wasn't crying anymore, but he looked like he hadn't slept at all. When he saw me, something in his expression broke. "Mum," he whispered. I took a slow breath. "You should go." He nodded, swallowing hard. We will." Lena zipped the last suitcase and lifted her chin, not defiantly, but with the exhaustion of someone who had finally run out of lies. "We'll leave the key on the table," she muttered. I said nothing. They stepped outside. Mark paused at the door, turning back. "Mum, I'm so sorry." His voice cracked. "I was stupid, I was weak, I should have protected you." I held his gaze for a long, painful moment, then I whispered, "I know." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was the truth, and it was all I could give. He nodded once, tears streaking down his face, then stepped outside. Their car pulled away slowly. I watched from the doorway until it turned the corner and disappeared. Then I closed the door. For the first time in months, maybe years, house felt like mine again. Ellen came that afternoon. She brought paperwork, folders, a notary's seal, and a look of exhausted triumph. "It's done," she said simply as she stepped inside. "They can't touch anything. Not your home, not your accounts, not your records." I exhaled deeply. She gave me a long, tight hug. "You were incredibly brave, Elena." I smiled faintly. I didn't feel brave. That's what bravery usually feels like. she replied. We spent hours documenting everything. The recording device Sam had found became a centerpiece of the formal report. The inspector's photos corroborated months of illegal activity. My pictures from the shed filled in all the darkest corners. By evening, the legal wall around me stood complete, and Mark and Lena were locked out of my life. The house was quiet the next few days. Too quiet. I kept expecting to hear Lena's voice from the kitchen or Mark pacing in the hallway, but the silence stayed. I tried to relax, but my mind wouldn't settle. I kept replaying Mark's tearful face, the way Lena's voice cracked, the recording Sam had found. I wasn't sure what hurt worse, the betrayal or the fact that I still loved my son despite everything. Sam visited daily, always bringing food, soups, stews, simple comfort meals. He never stayed long unless I asked him to. He understood what I needed without me having to say it. One evening, as we sat with tea on the porch, he glanced toward the empty street. "How are you doing?" he asked gently. I looked at my hands. I don't know. One moment I'm angry, the next I'm sad. Sometimes I miss him. Sometimes I'm relieved he's gone. I feel split. Sam nodded thoughtfully. Healing isn't neat, it's messy. You'll feel all of it at once, and that's all right. His words settled inside me like warm light. 2 weeks after they left, an envelope appeared in my mailbox, handwritten, my name on the front. My heart squeezed painfully. It was Mark's handwriting. I carried the letter inside and sat at the dining table, same table where they once counted their stolen money. My hands shook as I opened it. "Mum, I know I have no right to write to you. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. But I need you to know the truth, not the one Lena told you, the truth I didn't have the courage to say. For years, Lena convinced me that you didn't trust me, that you thought I was unsuccessful, that you pitied me. She said you would never give us the house willingly. She said it was only a matter of time before you cut us out completely. I believed her. I shouldn't have, but I did. I felt small. I felt like a failure. And she fed every insecurity I had. When we were drowning financially, she pushed harder. She said we could make money quickly using the spare rooms. She said it was temporary. She said you would never notice, but it wasn't temporary. And it wasn't harmless. Then the idea of guardianship came. She said it was for your safety, that you needed help, that you were overwhelmed. She twisted every concern into justification. But deep down I knew it was wrong. I knew we were crossing a line, and I was too weak to stop it. You deserved a better son. I'm sorry for everything, for the house, for the lies, for breaking your trust. I'm living alone now, trying to rebuild, trying to become a person I can look at in the mirror again. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope one day you might be willing to hear me out. Love, Mark. My hands fell to my lap as tears slid silently down my cheeks. The letter hurt, not because of the betrayal, but because it reminded me of the boy he once was. The boy who held my hand on his first day of school. The boy who cried when we buried his father. The boy who promised he'd take care of me when he grew up. Somewhere along the way, life had worn him down. Lena had guided his fears into something darker. But the boy was still there, buried, lost, trying to surface. I folded the letter gently and placed it in my nightstand drawer, where I could reach it, but not forget it. A month passed. Ellen called with an update. "Elena, the deadline to file criminal charges is approaching. I need your final decision. Do you want to press charges against Mark and Lena?" I closed my eyes. What a terrible question. Punish my son? Put him behind bars? Mark, who had made unforgivable choices but had also been swallowed by someone else's influence? Or let him try to rebuild on his own? I sat quietly for a long moment. Then I said, "Ellen, no, I won't file criminal charges." She was silent, then spoke softly. "You're kinder than they deserve." I shook my head. "I'm not doing it for them, I'm doing it for me. I need peace more than I need revenge." And it was true. Revenge would consume me. Peace would free me. We ended the call, and for the first time since everything began, I felt the faintest hint of freedom. Later that afternoon, as I sat alone on my porch, Sam joined me quietly. He held 2 bowls of warm vegetable stew. For dinner, he said. I smiled. You're spoiling me, he chuckled. Someone has to. We ate in silence, the sun dipping low, casting a golden light across the street. After a while, Sam said something unexpected. Alina, your husband once told me something. I looked at him, surprised. He continued, softly. He said if anything ever happened to him, I should look out for you. Make sure no one tried anything foolish. My breath caught. He really said that? Sam nodded. He loved you fiercely, and he knew how gentle your heart was. I wiped a tear from my cheek. The world felt quieter, softer, safer. For the first time since Mark and Lena moved in, I felt like I could breathe. The storm was over, but healing, real healing, was just beginning. 6 months passed. 6 months since the inspector knocked on my door. 6 months since I stood in my own living room and watched my entire world collapse and reshape itself in the span of a few hours. 6 months since Mark and Lena walked out of my home, leaving behind silence, dust, and a mountain of shattered trust. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't clean. It wasn't pretty. Healing rarely is. In the days that followed their departure, I hired a professional cleaning crew, something I had never done before. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I needed to reclaim the space, room by room, floor by floor. They scrubbed walls, they steam-cleaned carpets, they aired out linens, and when they left, I threw out every sheet, every towel, every piece of bedding that strangers had used. I couldn't bear the thought of keeping them. The master bedroom, once locked, once tainted by secrets, became something new. I turned it into an art studio, a space with white walls, shelves full of brushes, jars of acrylics, stacks of canvases, and sunlight flooding through the windows. I stood inside that room on the day it was finished and whispered to myself, "This is mine." Sam remained by my side through all of it, not intrusive, never pushing, just present. We fell into a quiet rhythm. He stopped by with warm casseroles on Mondays. He brought fresh flowers from his backyard on Fridays. We ate dinner together every Wednesday, simple meals, nothing fancy. We didn't talk about the past unless I wanted to. He let me lead. Even Ellen, who had started as my lawyer, became something closer to a friend. She visited every few weeks, making sure I understood my legal protections, encouraging me to attend community events. "You deserve to build something new," she said once. "Not to replace what was lost, but to honor what you survived." I like the way she put that. Of course, not everything healed. Some evenings I found myself staring at the front door, wondering if Mark might appear with an apology he couldn't write on paper. Other days I found myself holding the letter he had sent me, tracing the words with trembling fingers. He hadn't contacted me since. I told myself that was for the best. But the ache remained, a quiet, persistent ache, a mother's ache. Love doesn't disappear because trust breaks. Love doesn't stop because someone you raised betrays you. Love lingers, love questions, love hopes, even when you don't want it to. It was a warm evening in early autumn, when Sam and I sat outside on the porch, same spot where my husband and I once watched sunsets. The air smelled like blooming jasmine. I had just finished showing Sam a new painting I was working on, a garden scene filled with colors I hadn't allowed myself to use in years. "You're getting better," he said softly. "I'm getting freer," I corrected. He smiled, but something in his eyes flickered. Uncertainty, maybe even hesitation. "Elena," he said quietly, "there's something I've been meaning to tell you." I turned to him. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. When your husband was alive, he once asked me to watch over you, not just in the practical sense. He said he worried that your kindness, very thing he loved most, could one day be used against you. My breath caught. I thought he was being overprotective, Sam continued, but he looked me in the eyes and said, Sam, promise me you'll be there if she ever needs help she can't recognize. A tear slipped down my cheek. He never told me that, I whispered. He didn't want to worry you. He wanted you to live freely. But he wanted me to be ready. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of the evening settle around me. Thank you, I whispered. Sam placed his hand gently over mine. You were never alone, Elena. Note then, not now. That night, sleep came easier. The next morning, I woke early and stepped into my studio. Light poured across the canvas like a blessing. For the first time, I painted something I had never dared to paint before. A woman standing in a garden, one hand touching a tall sunflower, her face turned toward the sky. Her shadow stretched long behind her, dark but no longer threatening. The woman was older, wiser, weathered, but she was standing, strong, rooted, free. As the sun rose higher, I set down my brush and stared at the painting. A soft smile touched my lips. I thought about everything that had happened. The fake trip, the whispered conversations, the shed, the forged documents, the inspector, the confrontation, the departure, the letter, the silence, all of it. Anger, the betrayal, the fear had tried to swallow me whole. But here I was, still standing, still creating, still living. And then a thought surfaced, quiet, steady, undeniable. Love can be the perfect mask for a trap. But loving yourself deeply, fiercely, and without apology is the strongest shield against any betrayal. As I stepped away from the painting, the morning light washed through the window and touched my face. I closed my eyes. I breathed. For the first time in a long time, I was home. Truly, completely home. And this time, no one could take it from me.